Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of I Think I Like You, the podcast. I'm your host, Clara Artwager, and this is a podcast for women who have built genuinely impressive lives and still can't figure out why love isn't working. If you're high achieving, highly independent, the one who handles everything, and maybe quietly burning out on that identity too, you're in the right place. So you've probably done a lot of therapy, you have a lot of self-awareness, maybe your nightstand is stacked with self-help books like it is mine. And yet somehow the relationship piece still isn't moving. So new episodes drop here every week. You can also find me over on Instagram at ithinkilikeyou.co. And if you're ready to stop diagnosing the problem and start actually changing it, my private coaching program is open. It's for the high-achieving, highly independent woman in her 30s and 40s who has done the work, has the self-awareness, and is still waiting for this part of her life to click into place. So head to ithinkilikeyou.co. That will be linked in the show notes. Click on Work With Me, and you can learn more about that as well as schedule a discovery call. How are you all? This episode is falling shortly after the summer solstice. Summer is often something that seems to pass me by. I feel like I get into it too late, but the opposite has landed this year, perhaps because I have a kid who is like, please get me outside. And quite frankly, after a long winter, we're like, yeah, we're going to do all the things outside. We are knee deep in sunscreen and strawberries and scraped knees. I didn't even mean to make those all nests, but there they are. My oven actually seems to be on the fritz, which is leading me to prioritize all meals on the grill, which is not a bad thing. And I'm totally that 40-year-old, y'all. It's like, oh my God, I feel so much better after lifting weights. I started a local workout class about 6 weeks ago after years of just doing workouts at home. And perhaps it's all the early 2000s hip hop the instructor plays, but these classes are truly not just the joy of my life, but they're also fueling me through so many things that are just hard right now, but I have to kind of grind through. Having a toddler, I am working on this next iteration of my book proposal and flooded with deadlines around when it needs to go to my literary agent and when it needs to go to publishers. And that's all very real. So I find these classes to be a place where I can really burn through a lot of that nervous energy, the slog and the fog of parenting, as I like to say, and then get through the rest of my day. So dropping into this week's episode, the episode itself was inspired by a conversation I had with a group of women in early May who were all in their early 30s. And I posed the question to them, which is, if you knew you would meet your partner by 35, would you be pushing to date right now? Would you even want a relationship? I could barely get the question out before the responses were things like, no, I definitely wouldn't be dating right now. I want a relationship eventually, but I really want to focus on my own life right now. Like I finally have hobbies and time to do them. I'm only doing this because I fear getting behind and not meeting someone. And there was one woman in the group who even said, 35, forget that, like 38, that would be fine. And many other women nodded along. I wanted to unpack a few themes I see here because I find this sentiment to be really prominent in the early 30s for single women. I think this period of life is one of the first real seasons where we get to know who we actually are versus who we think we are or who we're performing to be. Obviously, that only grows across the 30s, and then your 40s hit and you're like, oh my God. All that said, our 20s are kind of chaotic, can be aimless, even if we're in a set career. You know, we've gotten far enough along in our work in our early 30s, generally speaking, where we're actually making some money, and we also have some time to ourselves, and we know things about ourselves that guide all of that. So we're often like, well, who am I or what am I outside of work? It can also be a season of like, wow, I learned a lot in my 20s through work, romance, friendship, family, and now people are often saying to themselves like, I've got the stuff I want to work on. I've got the stuff that I want to heal. And that's where they want to dig in. And they don't exactly want to be searching for a partner right now. There's a part of that that feels really, really good. Like, I want to live my life and dig in here. And then there is another part, and this was the conundrum that I was speaking about with this group of like, but oh my God, I'm going to get behind if I'm not dating. And so I need to be dating, but none of these dates are working out and the apps suck and the whole thing is terrible. There is something to be said for an experience sucking when your heart isn't in it. But I also totally get it. I sat here too, exactly. In my early 30s, I was watching my friends get married and have babies, witnessing my own biological clock ticking. I wanted to meet someone, but I also really, really wanted and needed this season of life to myself. But here is the truth that cannot override any app or matchmaker or tool that promises like better dates, better connections. If you are dating largely from a place of, I'm going to be behind, all the good ones are taken, so I better work on this, and I have to do this now, otherwise it will never happen for me. When the truth of your heart and what you actually feel is more, I'm really enjoying this time and space to myself. Yeah, like I'm open to meeting someone, but I'd like to focus on my hobbies, the trip I'm taking this summer, the personal work I'm doing on myself. Healing from a past relationship. Like those are all very real things. If that's really what's there, you're not going to have the dating experience that you want, even if you put in all the effort. You're not going to meet people. It's either going to be a bunch of, you know, first dates, second dates that go nowhere, no one matching with you, people sending a few messages and then falling off, people being flaky, like, yeah, sure, let's meet up. And then it never comes to be, people ghosting, the situationship vibe. You know what I'm talking about. What we often do, though, is take all of that. We like take it all in and we're like, dating is shit. There's something wrong with me. I'm never going to meet someone. It's something I'm doing. This is not a fun cycle. The other week, a client I'd worked with for about the last year messaged me and said she'd met someone in person 6 weeks prior and they decided to enter a relationship. I was, of course, over the moon for her, but I wasn't surprised to hear the news. And here's why. Because I knew the space she was in right before this experience. So we had spent a lot of 2025, the year prior, helping her heal from a previous relationship and doing deeper work on her upbringing, all the kinds of things around her family of origin to understand her relationship patterns. That is the deeper work that I do with people. And what I always witness after a season of that type of work is we need to cocoon a bit. We need to focus solely on doing things that serve us and nourish us. Said another way, we need to integrate, right? Like we're not ready to be like fully out there and connecting with people because we need to take all that was kicked up and worked through and sit with that. We need to just be. That's exactly what she did through the winter and early spring of 2026. She took herself off the dating apps and spent time not working to make this thing happen. Instead, she took care of herself. And the thing I find is that even though I'm guiding people through this process, they always tend to land there naturally themselves because they're so rooted in understanding what is true for me, what am I craving, what do I actually need. But it's the space we are so afraid to enter that is always the medicine that we need. And I think that's really worth naming directly because it's so tied to who a lot of you are, myself included. High achievers are wired to do, to optimize, to strategize, to work the problem. And that wiring has served us incredibly well in every other area of our lives. But dating isn't a project you can outwork no matter how many downloadable guides to perfect the text message or do something to your profile or wait to sleep with someone that you have sitting in your inbox. The constant doing, the swiping, the optimizing your profile, going on dates you're not really feeling, that can actually be a way, flesh it often is, of avoiding the deeper question, the deeper work, which is, what do I actually want? And what am I actually ready for? Double click on that second question. Not doing, not being active, is also a move, stepping back, going inward, letting things integrate. That's not passivity. It's just a different kind of action. It just doesn't get recognized as one because it doesn't produce anything you could point to. And high achievers are really uncomfortable here. But that's exactly why it tends to be the place where the real shift happens. Many women I speak with and work with in their early 30s experience a similar sentiment. Like, I'm just doing this because I'm afraid. I don't want to get behind. I already am behind. I don't actually want to be doing this, though. They don't spend any time looking at, why do I dislike dating so much? Why do my efforts feel so futile? Why am I having experiences like first and second dates that go nowhere, flaky people who message and fall off, or who never want to meet up, but initiated saying they wanted to meet up, lingering situationships? Like, why is that my constant? This is the stuff to look at. This is the stuff to get clear on. Now, there's some inner wisdom here because this is not easy stuff to look at. And your body, your subconscious, knows that. It's afraid to go into those proverbial emotional waters. But once the clarity comes, even though it might be scary, it might be destabilizing, this is, of course, why I walk people through this process. Once that clarity comes, people are like, wow, whoa, like, holy shit, I didn't even know that was there. I didn't even see that. I actually had an experience like this, something totally outside of dating earlier this week. I was voice noting with my dear friend, Sophia, who is so many things. I mean, she's a functional nutritionist. She's a psychological astrologer. She is such a wise human being. And I was sharing with her that I'd done a few things. I needed to schedule a physical for this year. And it turns out I already had one scheduled for the fall. But I had never done the blood work from my previous physical 8 months ago. And then on top of that, I'd never gone and gotten the mammogram that was ordered after my gyno exam last summer. And then on top of that, I was sort of lumping these things together. My husband and I need to set up all the legal stuff that you do. Well, you need to do this before you have a child. I should have done it for myself as an individual, but we didn't. All the wills and the trusts and the whatever, right? To have those ducks in a row. And I had been punting a meeting with our lawyer to do that. And because our lawyer is associated with our financial advisor firm, there was one particular woman that I really wanted to work with. Well, now it turns out she's leaving the firm. I missed the opportunity. Of course, there are other people and lawyers within the firm that I can work with, and I can go and get the blood work now, and I can go and get a mammogram when I have my gyno exam in a couple of weeks. But I was noticing this consistency of avoiding really all of these elements of caring for myself and my family. And I shared this with Sophia, and she was like, well, okay, you're acknowledging it, so like give yourself credit, but also it's pretty obvious to me. She's like, this is a fear of death. Like, all of these elements relate to getting, closer to the realities of life, like really knowing what's going on in your body, like really designating, what ifs around your finances. And when she said that, I was like, of course, as I'm talking about with the experience of why dating isn't working out and moving in that direction, it wasn't easy to hear. It was hard. I was like, wow, okay, I clearly have some feelings there. I clearly have some fears there. But then once it was named, I was like, oh my God, I just want to move through this then. The act of which then is moving forward with the appointments, which I'm going to do. So again, you see that clarity comes through that provides freedom, but it's also illuminating because it's not just a fear of death for me that came up. It also wraps around to intimacy, right? Being more tethered to my husband, my life, and as someone who really still struggles with intimacy and living in that reality, I can still kind of push back on it, even though we have a marriage license, even though our names are both on the deed of this house, right? Doing a trust, living will, et cetera, is another element of that. So again, confronting that was actually really empowering to see that within myself and say, like, Oh, okay. Okay. That's there. That's something for me to observe, to journal on, to think on when I'm driving in the car and trying to ignore my child that's screaming in the back. That's probably not the best time to do it, but you get what I'm saying. The same thing applies here. And this is again, a lot of the folks that I do a lot of the work I do with folks in their early 30s. It could be at any point in life, but it often lands there. And we slip into deep work while taking a dating break. That said, you can tackle these questions for yourself. And you all know I'm going to say grab a pen, grab some paper, grab your journal, and here are your questions to go ham on. Why do I dislike dating so much? Why do I force myself to do it? Why do my efforts feel so futile? And what have my consistent experiences been? Like, what are the dates like? Are they meh? You go, they're nice, but nothing beyond that? Are you still stuck texting with someone, for the last 5 months that you've maybe slept with twice and you think it's going to become something and you have a big crush on them, but it's not going anywhere? Like, what is your experience? Why do you think it is that way? I'm going to go back to where we started, which is this predicament around 35. I think meeting someone I think meeting someone at 35 and the desire to do so is really interesting. I didn't plan it this way, but I did happen to meet my husband at 35 and have a baby at 39. And this landed as really right for me. Maybe I'm just saying that in hindsight because it is my life. It's the life I'm living, but it is how I feel. I had a lot of runway to build my career, which feels really good. I know myself better as a person, even with having a child and slowing down work-wise a bit. I I haven't lost a lot that I've built, and I'm able to ramp back up. I enjoy being a mom of a 1.5-year-old at 40. I enjoy it. And I can connect with other mothers who, look at me and I think, oh my God, how are you doing it? I would be so tired. It makes the reality we know. Um, but I find that to be really true for me. And I think that's true for a lot of women in terms of what they experience in the early 30s and that 35 to 38, let's call it, or 35 to 37, whatever it is for you, marker. There's a lot in life we do from a place of, I have to do this thing. Otherwise, there's something wrong with me, or I'll be an outsider. I'll be abandoned. There's nothing wrong with wanting to meet someone. And loneliness is a legitimate thing. But I think in the era of online dating, especially when it's so easy to just like download an app and swipe mindlessly, we don't drop in and deeply consider, do I really want to be doing this? And why am I doing this? The fear of being behind is not a reason to date. There has to be more behind it if you want to see something actually happen, which again, PS, is why you're not seeing things happen. You don't actually want it, and you probably fear intimacy. Rich, grounded, truthy reasons to date look like I want to open my life up to someone. I know myself deeply, and I want to get to know someone else in that way. I want to build a life with someone, and I'm ready to do that. Sit with those. Notice if any of them are like, ooh, I don't know about that. Or notice if you land more in the space of, yeah, the only reason I'm doing this is out of fear. I'm watching my peers couple up, pop out kids, and I just think I gotta stay on the hamster wheel. But again, going on the actual dates is one type of action. Taking a break and coming into this part of yourself is another type of action. If any of this is landing, if you recognize yourself as someone who's always on, always handling it, always moving to the next thing, and you're starting to wonder if that's the very pattern that's keeping love a distance, that's exactly what I do in my private coaching program. Again, it's for the high achieving, highly independent woman in her 30s and 40s who has done the work, has the self-awareness, and is still waiting for this piece here to come to fruition. As always, you can find out more information at ithinkilikeyou.co. If you have questions, thoughts, or concerns, you can drop those in on Instagram at ithinkilikeyou.co. It's funny the way I just landed on concerns, y'all. Like, well, you can tell me what concerns you have. All right. I hope you are having a beautiful start to the summer and a beautiful week. I'll talk to you soon.